Could this be what's in store for the Harley Lowrider S coming up in the future? Alright everybody, what is up? What is up? As always, thanks for stopping by on another ride through Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. We are out on the Harley Sportster Iron 1200 right now. We're going to take a little dive into Center City, Philly. As you guys know, right there you can see the skyline. I love giving you guys a look at Philly from two wheels. And as we take this ride through Philadelphia today, Center City, we're going to talk a little bit about a follow-up to last week's video. So we're going to expand further on last week's video, where if you tuned in there, you saw that I was talking about the Harley Sport Glide. So make sure you go back and take a look at that video. If you haven't, go back and take a look at that video where I'm talking about the Sport Glide. In a nutshell, basically that video was about how it's getting cut from the lineup, just some of my thoughts on how it's getting cut, why it's getting cut, and then kind of a precursor setting up this video that we're going to have another conversation today that could be one of the possibilities as to why it's getting cut from the lineup. But basically just a recap on that video, just a quick recap, high level. I was basically saying, you know, it's probably getting cut because it's not selling, apparently. You know, that's one of the reasons they would get cut. I talked a little bit about some of the reasons why it might not be selling. I love that bike. There's just a few kind of features that I've heard other people complain about as well. But anyways, go back and take a look at that video when you have a chance. Anyways, one of the main themes of that video, one of the reasons that I thought maybe it could be going away is there a change to a bike in the 2022 lineup coming up that kind of makes the Sport Glide not necessary anymore? And so what exactly do I mean by that? So a couple months ago, there was a picture floating around of what looked to be a Softail Lowrider S with hard case bags on them and an FXRT fairing. And so that video created kind of a lot of hype about a potential FXRT Softail coming out in 2022. And so that begs the question, would you then have the Softail Lowrider S and then another version or variation of a Softail Lowrider S FXRT with the bags, the fairing? And that idea, or that theory, would then require two separate models. So you'd have two separate model bikes in the lineup there, the regular Softail Lowrider S and then the FXRT version. But again, hang with me here as I try to explain kind of a new theory or idea I started to think about. That would require two separate bikes in the lineup, okay? So that would be two different bikes. And again, all speculation at this point. But where I'm going with this is based off the Softail Standard that we saw released a few years ago. So if you remember when the Softail Standard came out a few years ago, they released the bike as it was, and then they had these different packages. Then they're still on the website there. I'm going to put some of those pictures up here. They had these different packages that you could get to kind of build out your Softail Standard into these different kind of varieties of bike. So it's like, you know, you could turn it into the touring, or you could turn it into the club style, and you just kind of bought that package from Harley and kind of put those parts on your bike and turned it into what you wanted. And so as I was browsing around, I'm taking a look at that on the site the other day, and I'm like, oh, you know, that was pretty cool. I remember when it came out. That's pretty cool. You know, you've got these different kind of packages or options that you could kind of buy up into for that specific bike. And so now you're probably starting to see where I'm going with this, and I hope I can kind of articulate this the right way of what I'm thinking in my head here. So you can probably see where I'm going with this. Does Harley make a move to not necessarily make two separate models of the Lowrider S, like a touring FXRT version and then the regular version, but do they potentially create a package that you would essentially buy up into to create like that convertible Lowrider S? You know, so in that way they wouldn't have to create two totally separate bikes with those different parts on them. They would just keep producing the Lowrider S as is. We already know it's a seller. We already know it's going to sell really well. That could potentially help reduce any uncertainty of creating a brand new model like a Lowrider S FXRT touring option that would, you know, maybe it wouldn't sell as much as we think it would. So with this idea and this theory that I've been kind of like bouncing around in my head a little bit after kind of looking at the website and some things that we think might be coming up for 2022, is does Harley just make it a separate package of a fairing, you know, whatever type of fairing it might be, FXRT, hard case bags, you know, enhanced suspension or anything like that, where you kind of buy up into that model. So you're always going to have the Lowrider S there, and maybe people that want the additional touring option, they could just buy up into that. Again, I think that could potentially be something that we might see, because we've already seen it with the Softail Standard, like I mentioned. They've already done something like this, so they could potentially replicate this with the Lowrider S. And again, my thinking there on that is you don't have to create two separate models then. You've just got the Lowrider S, and you can build off of it. Another thing that kind of has me thinking about this too is the new reservation system that everyone's talking about. It seems now, with bikes being limited, supply chain, all this and that, the Harley has now released the reservation model and system online, where you're now almost having to reserve a 2022 model and then go pick it up at the dealer. You might not be buying bikes directly at the dealer anymore with this reservation system. So what I could see there is you potentially pick out your Lowrider S, and then, you know, there's an option or something to click up into the next model that's built specifically for you that way. Or even after the fact, you buy your Lowrider S, and you could have the option to buy these specific parts afterwards to build out that touring model. One of the reasons that I kind of like this idea, again, it gives you that flexibility. You're just building a Lowrider S. It's out there, you know it's going to sell, it's super popular, everyone loves it. It reduces any uncertainty of creating a brand new model and producing it and potentially having it not sell. You know you're going to sell the Lowrider S as it is anyways, and then if people do want those additional options, you can just create those and buy those, you know, the fairings, extra suspension, the hard case bags, and turn it into that. And so then that's kind of my tie-in to as why maybe the Sport Glide is going away, because if it comes down to that, where, you know, you've got some of these options to add on to the Lowrider S like that, then it's almost exactly the same bike at that point. You know, you've got the detachable bags, the detachable fairing. There's almost no reason for the Sport Glide to be in the lineup at that point, because it's the bigger engine, you know, it's the fancy Lowrider S that everybody likes. At that point, you don't really need it in the lineup. So is that a potential reason as to why the Sport Glide might be getting cut? Are we looking at seeing a convertible Lowrider S coming up in 2022? And again, a lot of this was spawned from, you know, that image that was circulating a few months back, to where is that going to be a potential new model? So I think it's an awesome idea. I think it would be a really great bike, but is it more so a package buy-up type option, where they're just producing a Lowrider S as is, and then you've got some of these kind of additional features that you can buy up into, like I said, that we saw with the Softail Standard a couple years ago when that came out. So man, we made it way down into South Philly during this conversation. That was a fun trek through Center City. Now we're like all the way down into South Philly. It was like Point Breeze, Grace Ferry area or something like that. But anyways, I just wanted to follow up to last week's video like I promised. Kind of these two videos in conjunction with each other. The Sport Glide, we're almost positive. Well, I think we're 100% positive now that that's going away in 2022. And then other than that, we'll have to see what Harley has up their sleeve for the Lowrider S. I think something's coming. I really do believe that something is coming with the Lowrider S, seeing as the Sport Glide is going away, whether, you know, the Lowrider S get a bigger engine, or whether it's getting some of these touring options that you can kind of attach on and tack on. So we shall see. We will, you know, we're a little ways away. That new stuff is going to be announced in January of 2022, I believe. So I always get excited that time when some of this new stuff gets released. New models, some slight different changes here and there and stuff like that. I'm sure we'll be getting some videos out when those changes are announced. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for now. Let me know your thoughts on the Sport Glide and a potential Lowrider S touring option, or convertible with some additional touring parts that you might be able to tack on to your Lowrider S, either during the production or after the fact. You could buy those afterwards, turn it into that little mini bagger, a little mini touring option. I know everybody's kind of got their theories and ideas out there, so make sure you drop them in the comments. Let me know what you think. Everybody looks at these a little different way, so let me know what kind of your ideas and opinions are. What you think is going to happen. Sport Glide going away, Lowrider S sticking around. What changes are you predicting for next year? So like I said, it's going to wrap this one up for now. We're cruising on Wharton Street down in South Philly, taking a look at some row homes. But anyways, as always, if you like anything we got going on here, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. And you know that we will catch you on the next one. Ride safe out there. Make it a good one, guys. It's the Moto Jawn. We'll see y'all on down the road.